We've talked before about how livestock producers can use cover crops as a grazing option. That forage alternative is part of the research conducted at the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center. Located near Clay Center, Nebraska, the U.S. MARC works with the University of Nebraska and other land-grant universities to further study cattle, swine, and sheep production. We recently talked with U.S. MARC's Chad Engle to learn more about how the center is using cover crops in its beef operation.
I think we've probably used cover crops in just about every way that you can, from a cow-calf and feedlot perspective, actually. We've grazed calves that intended to feed out on there. We've used oats, turnips, radishes in a mix like that for stock or steers, and looked at their gains on that. We've done a lot of that in collaboration with UNL. We're doing heifer development on cover crops now in a combination with corn stock grazing. Some supplementation strategies associated with those. And then we've done it with cows. Pregnant, dry spring cows, lactating fall cows during the breeding season, and pretty much any other time of the year. We've done it spring, summer, fall, even well into the winter.
Why, Chad? What's the goal here?
The goal is always to reduce carrying costs. And it's also, the great thing about cover crops is there's a soil health component associated with that we can really take advantage of. Those brassicas in terms of soil compaction, always having a living root in that soil has been shown countless times to be very beneficial. And so we can benefit the soil, we can lower our carrying costs for our cow herd, we can be better resources of our land. It can be really a win-win.
If you're growing cover crops, what's the timeline for putting animals on and then taking them back off?
Great question. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that. In the spring, you might be grazing something like cereal rye, or in our case, a lot of times triticale. And triticale, you want to get on that early. You typically will plant that in the fall. Sometimes you can get fall and spring grazing, but our goal is usually spring. And when you think it's too early to go on there, it's probably not. Because triticale, I can remember a very specific example. One of the first times we planted triticale, we all went out on Friday afternoon and we said, yep, it'll be perfect on Monday. And we come back on Monday and it's 8 inches tall, and we're behind. And so it's a learning process. You go after those things with a lot of stock density. We try to get really good harvest efficiency by doing rotational grazing even on those cover crops, and moving cows every couple of days, sometimes every day. In the fall, the longer you can let that stuff grow, the more forage you're going to have out there to go graze. And you can graze cover crops long after they're dormant, long after from the road they don't look very good. There's still a lot of stuff to go get out there. And so we've taken advantage of both systems.
And you said you're using them in the feedlot as well?
So we've looked at steer development outside of the feed yard, stocker development. And one of the things that we've done is looking at, we did a study, and again, this was with UNL, where we took and did the 3 different types. We developed steers in the feedlot, like a traditional calf-fed type situation, on corn stalks, and then on the oats, turnips, or radishes cover crop mix. And then we've compared carcass data, feedlot performance on all 3s, and then there's an economic component to that too.
Tell me about the performance you're seeing.
It's kind of some of the stuff that you would expect to see. We were getting 1.5 to 2.5 pounds a day, average daily gain on the cover crops, which we kind of expected. It's very much weather dependent. We had some years where it was outstanding, and some other years where the climate and such was a little tougher. What we are seeing is really good compensatory gain on those steers when they get into the feed yard. In other words, when we're on the cover crop, putting a lot of frame on those cattle. And a lot of capacity to eat and gain when they get to the feed yard, which is where I think the cover crop development part really has some advantages.
So Chad, if a producer is looking to use cover crops for grazing, hasn't done it before, what advice would you give them?
Be flexible, have a backup plan. There's always a risk when you're talking about planting a cover crop in terms of a cow feed resource. It's less of a risk with irrigation, but there's still a risk. So I would advise to have a backup plan. I would say in the fall, planting date is paramount. You can almost measure it on a graph the next day that you're too late, the terms of decreased forage that's going to be there. I would say have a plan for mud. We've run into all kinds of situations. We're going to plant this right after silage harvest and it rains 3 inches. Now what do you do? So I guess I wouldn't throw all my eggs in that basket. The first time I did it, I'd have a plan. I would start small, but definitely don't be afraid of it, because the opportunities are tremendous with this resource. If a producer is really interested in taking a look at cover crops, I would really encourage them to come out to the Research Center in Clay Center, Nebraska, look at what we've done, We're happy to show you where we did it. We can show you numbers. We can show you how we fenced it, and even look at the cattle maybe when they're out there doing it. It's an opportunity that you should take and come see what we have.